What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Sunday, and still trying to process, really, all of the news that came out yesterday evening regarding Sheikh Jassim from Qatar pulling out, withdrawing from the Manchester United takeover sale process. And then it was kind of a double whammy, wasn't it? And you kind of saw the series of events play out, and once it did make a bit more sense, realistically, with the news that was to come. So not only, of course, the news was that Sheikh Jassim from Qatar and the 92 Foundation had improved his bid to purchase Manchester United. It was rejected. Because of the rejection, he pulled out of the takeover process. And then it came to pass, and then it came out that actually Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Ineos, their bid to acquire 25% of Manchester United. There's seemingly an agreement in principle in place. It's set to be ratified this coming week in a board meeting. And then more details came out surrounding the actual finer points of that. Sporting control, a full takeover plan, what that would even look like, etc., etc. As well as more details about just how this process is played out. And that's really what we're going to be talking about this morning too, is that yesterday, as I mentioned, a lot of the news that was covered was regarding the withdrawal, the departure of Sheikh Jassim and Qatar from the takeover process. And it left a lot of people wondering. It left a lot of people wondering and questioning, okay, so Ineos, they're going for 25%. What does that even mean? What does that even look like? You can't even call it a takeover. It's not a takeover, it's a purchase. They've purchased 25%. They are minority shareholders of Manchester United. And is there going to be any difference? We've done nearly 12 months of the exploration of strategic alternatives just to end up possibly where we were before, around 1.5 to 1.8 billion pounds for 25% of United. The Glazers stick around. How many of them? We don't know. What's their control going to look like? Well, they would have ultimate control because they would still be the majority shareholders. Obviously, Ineos could be purchasing some of their shares, but also some of the minority shares. So that's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to have a look at what is the latest developments, what is the latest news surrounding all of this. Ben Jacobs has written quite an interesting thread on social media about Ineos and Ratcliffe's plans. The Athletic have given a really in-depth look at how this whole thing came together. The Glazers' true intentions, Ratcliffe's true intentions. And also, whilst we're talking about that, I think it's important to look at what Ineos are currently doing in football at the moment, you know, with Nice. And there's a piece written a few months ago, actually, that I think expands on that quite a lot. So if you haven't already, click the like button, be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. I know it's a weird one because, look, I've seen the reaction on social media overnight, and I think, as is with everything, there's a lot of absolutes involved in this. And I don't think all of them are completely right and justified. For me, I can give my opinion. I can't speak for everyone. I can't speak for every United fan. I can't speak for anyone. The only person I can speak for is myself. For me, it was never about having Middle Eastern money. It was never about having oil money. It was never, to be honest, it was never really about winning. About winning trophies and what have you. I've seen a lot of people attacking people from both sides of this. And it was never about that for me. Do you want someone that's got a load of money? Gosh, of course, it's great because that's what it takes to compete nowadays. For me, my hope was that throughout this whole process, our end point would be with owners that were no longer the Glazer family. That was my hope throughout all of this. And we've got to the end of it, and that's not what we've got. We've got a new minority shareholder who says that this is a foot in the door for a part of a long-term buyout. But again, how that's going to work, we don't know. How and what's been written down to suggest that they could get to that point, we don't know. And by all accounts, and we're going to get into this, even if Ineos have sporting decisions at the club, then the Glazers have won. Win-win for both of them. Because they still control the club. If it fails, it's not their fault. Hey, we don't make the sporting decisions. If it succeeds, we're genius and we reap the rewards and we take money anyway. So they win in this situation. And the fans certainly don't win because the people that we've wanted out, they're sticking around. And I truly, genuinely mean this. If Ineos had won the race Well, they have won the race, but if they won the race to acquire the majority of Manchester United and the Glazer family were no longer involved in the club, I could get behind that. I'd say, well, maybe that wasn't my primary choice, but you know what? I can get behind that because the Glazers, they're not here anymore. What I just struggle and I can't get behind, and what's so deflating is we go through this whole process and they're still there. And I also understand that people say, well, it's their prerogative about what they want to sell and what they don't want to sell. Of course it is. It's their business. But they had an offer on the table that was worth double what this club is, or this organisation, this business is worth, and they still said no, which really shows their full hand that they never, ever, ever truly wanted to sell Manchester United in totality. What they were really looking for from the beginning was someone that was going to acquire a minority stake, because even with Ineos's first offer for just the Glazers share, which turns out legally they couldn't do, would they even have really accepted that? Probably not. Because they want power. They want control. That's it. And it's incredibly deflating to get through this whole process and end up near enough where we started off. And, I think people are still trying to sort of figure it all out. But as I mentioned, the details surrounding all of this and Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe and the 25%, we've got quite a few details on that this morning for you. So let's get into this. So Ben Jacobs wrote quite an extensive thread on social media, as I mentioned last night. He has said, more on Sir Jim Ratcliffe's 25% offer for Manchester United, worth around $1.8 billion. So again, 1.5 billion quid, something like that. I'm not a currency expert. Now, a breakthrough reportedly occurred last month when Ratcliffe restructured his bid. It will now be put for board approval next week. But this is sort of the interesting part in this, is that Ratcliffe plans to be hands-on at Manchester United, and the deal is contingent on sporting control. The 25% is also with a view to eventual control of the club. Those close to Ineos insist this is about getting, quote, their foot in the door. Once again, what that really means, we don't know. A foot in the door, is that a foot in the door with any promises? Is that a foot in the door with anything written down to suggest that in 2024, we have an option to purchase this amount? In 2025, we can purchase this amount. In 2026, we can purchase this amount. Or is it just a case to have a foot in the door and be sitting at the table with no promises, with nothing written down, with nothing that's legally binding? Is it just out of hope? Because I think when it came to Manchester United, hope died quite long ago, when the Glazers purchased the club back in, 2004, 2005. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe says he wants to be hands-on, and the deal is contingent on sporting control. But as I just said a few minutes ago, it's a win-win then for the Glazers, because he could be given sporting control over United. He could be like, okay, you can make the sporting decisions. It hasn't really been working for us, making some sporting decisions, so we'll give that to you. First of all, given the fact the Glazers have majority control, they could take sporting control back at any point because it's theirs. It's their company. They have it all. On top of that, if it doesn't work out, if the sporting decisions are bad and Manchester United get worse, they've got a fall guy. The guy that just gave them £1.5 billion, they can point to him and see it's his fault. It's not our fault anymore. We don't make the decisions. They make the decisions. So it's his fault. And then if it succeeds, they win as well, because guess what? They reap the profits. Dividends, take them out, keep coming out. We still own, have everything here. And even if we do succeed with the sporting decisions of Ineos, what does it make the club? More valuable. It makes the club more valuable. They can sell it for even more. So that's why I say, is anything written down on paper about their foot in the door and about them actually doing a full buyout in the first place? So they've won in that instance. Now, Jacob says that he understands that Ratcliffe, if he gets board approval, will undertake a 100-day review of the club. Erik ten Hag's job is not thought to be under threat, but a new sporting structure is likely to be considered. Paul Mitchell is one of the names under consideration for sporting director, which is, again, nothing new. Paul Mitchell has long been linked to a Sir Jim Ratcliffe vision for Manchester United. And look, getting Paul Mitchell into the club, of course that would be a positive. Ralph Rangnick wanted him into the club, but it's thinking little picture. It's not thinking the big picture, because we have seen that plenty of positive and quality people who are good at what they do, whether they be managers, whether they be players, whether they be, even people like Ralph Rangnick, who was meant to be, a consultant, or directors, executives, whatever you want to call them. Plenty of them have come in under the names of the Glazers, and it's become a graveyard for them. And I don't see why, just because now Ineos have a 25% stakeholding of Manchester United, but Glazers are still fully in control, that would differ. And my look at that is, if you think it's going to be any different, even though the Glazers are still in charge, isn't that the definition of insanity? That's real copium and hopium, isn't it? That's real. Well, maybe it'll be different this time around. Maybe. Have we done all of this? Doing the same thing over and over again and thinking it's going to be any different. That is the definition of insanity. Now, Jacobs also says that although a vote must take place, it's largely seen as a formality. Ratcliffe knew previous structures presented had opposition from minority shareholders who had expressed their opinions in writing. He pivoted, and there are now no fears of litigation, which, as I mentioned last night, the only thing that the minority shareholders were concerned about wasn't the well-being of Manchester United in terms of the club or anything like that, the best interest of the club. It was the best interest of themselves and the best interest of their own stocks. What they had written to the Manchester United board about in the past was that when Ineos were just looking to acquire the Glazers' majority share, they felt that they were being excluded from a possible takeover deal, and they wanted to be included, and they felt that that was illegal. They were going to tie the club, the Glazers, Ineos up in litigation, and then independent members of the board of directors said, well, under those circumstances, we would never accept an Ineos offer. Obviously, that's now changed. So Jim Ratcliffe has pivoted. He is now including the minority shareholders as well as including the Glazers. When they acquire that 25%, it'll be partially from the Glazers and partially from the minority shareholders. Therefore, everyone's involved and everyone's happy. Those close to Ineos had always argued that Ratcliffe was fully aware he had legalities and any risks regardless of the structures he considered. He has been very hands-on during the process, impressing those running it. One of the issues the 9-2 Foundation faced was the lack of face time with Sheikh Jassim. Multiple intermediaries were used. This is why, in part, the Glazers reached out to Nasser Al-Khelaifi because they knew and trusted him to consult. Ratcliffe reportedly learned lessons from the Chelsea process, where he entered late with Clear Lake Bowley already in an exclusive period. This irked key figures at the Rain Group. This time, Ratcliffe acted differently. His belief all along has been relationships with those running the process are almost as important as the finances. Now, as far as the concern or worry that Sheikh Jassim could go and purchase another club, obviously there were rumours of Inter Milan, possibly him being interested or him putting an offer to Inter Milan or anything like that. Ben Jacobs has also said that as it stands, Sheikh Jassim has no active plans to buy another football club, and rumours of an Inter Milan purchase are wide of the mark. But I think the worry that some people will have with that is some people suggest that there will be... You have to look at it kind of certain ways, don't you? So obviously Sheikh Jassim himself, he might not purchase another football club. He's a Manchester United fan. But seemingly, and this was kind of the things that Bloomberg and others were reporting, coming out of the World Cup in late 2022, early 2023, the general feeling coming out of Qatar was the World Cup was such a massive success for them that they wanted to invest more into football and they wanted to buy another big football club. And Manchester United was the biggest, obviously, in the world, and they thought it would be, it's a crown jewel of world football, certainly English football, and that's what they were looking to acquire. After the collapse of all of this, there might just be still a general feeling within Qatar that, we still want to buy a big football club, but it's not going to be Manchester United. And I still wouldn't be shocked, considering that there are clubs in the Premier League not on the market, shall we say unofficially, or possibly on the market. Clubs like Spurs, they were looking for minority buyers. Obviously now their owner has his own legal issues. Maybe that will change as well. Liverpool at one point were on the market. Now they're off the market. I think something was just announced about a minority investment with them anyway. But you never know. So as far as Sheikh Jassim purchasing another football club, that one might be wide of the mark. But as far as a Qatari bid for another club, certainly can happen. super chat here from Aya says, serves you arrogant United fans right. You were wasting time claiming you had a better season than Arsenal while your club was in a bad state. I mean, one's got nothing to do with the other, by the way. And look, we can have this discussion till the cows come home. How many trophies did Arsenal win last season, guys? And how many trophies did United win last season? Oh, this is when you get into Arsenal saying the Carabao Cup doesn't count. Right. Got it. Even though if Arsenal win the Carabao Cup this season, then it will count, because that's the kind of mental gymnastics that happen. Got it. Gotcha. Don't worry. No problem. It's just like, oh my God. Because then also, they'll say, well, we finished second and you finished, well, where did we finish? Oh yeah, third, behind Arsenal. And they'll say, yeah, but, you know, second's better and we pushed City to the title. Last few weeks didn't really feel like that, did it? You know, and in reality, when it comes to Arsenal too, don't get me wrong, they're going to probably have a successful season this season. But history remembers how many trophies you won. When you finished 8th or whatever it was, and you won the FA Cup, you still talk about that to this day. You don't talk about where Man United finished that season, whether it be 2nd or 3rd or 4th. People remember trophies. But, the fact that an Arsenal fan, we have Takeover news, and it's October at this point, and they come in and they say, serves you right for saying you had a better season last season. That really stuck in your craw a little bit, didn't it, mate? That really hurt you. Oh, well, there you go. Andy says, we failed as a fan base. Only united by name, but fan base divided. We can't join together as one and go at them. Look at Ajax and Liverpool fans. Look, well, it's going to be interesting to see, Andy, certainly what the reaction is from fans. Because I don't think that's where I disagree with, and I think Flex kind of turned around last night when I was talking to him during the stream on the phone that, look, I mean, this 25% is going to be ratified next week. They say. When next week? I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or if it's going to be later on in the week. We don't have those kind of details at the moment. But there have been points in history where, you know, the Super League's a good example of it was done. All the clubs came out and released their statements and said, you know, we're forming a new league, and eventually it didn't happen as well. And there is still time, but it's going to take a lot as well. So, yes, we'll see with that, certainly. Now, The Athletic has written a really interesting piece on all of this, coming from a lot of the big hitters, David Ornstein, Laurie Whitwell, etc. And I've added more details as to the state of play regarding Sir Jim Ratcliffe at the moment. So they have said that Manchester United's board is set to vote on selling a minority stake in the club to British billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe after Sheikh Jassim's Qatari group claimed to have withdrawn from the race. The protracted battle to buy the Premier League club from the Glazer family, who put it on the market last November, had been a two-horse contest between Sheikh Jassim's 9-2 Foundation and Ratcliffe's Ineos petrochemical empire. Amid PR briefings and fan protests over 11 months, neither bidder met the Glazers' asking price of $8 billion, which is £6.4 billion. So that asking price is astronomical. £6.4 billion is what they were looking for. 6.4 billion quid. And they wonder why nobody paid that, because no one was ever going to pay that. And I think also that's where we kind of have to step back and realize that the Glazers really never had any full intention, true intentions of fully selling Manchester United. They never really had any true intentions of getting rid of 100% of the club. They purposely overvalued it. They purposely said, this is what we're looking for. So that whole talk of, well, we'd be willing to sell for the right price. The right price was a price they knew nobody was going to pay. Apparently, according to The Athletic, both parties instead valued at the club at closer to $6.3 billion, which again is significantly less than the $8 billion that the Glazers valued it at. And I think that's also what hurts involved in this all as well. It's the hope that kills you. Because I've seen people point out and they say, well, if Sheikh Jassim wasn't involved in all of this, and if Qatar wasn't involved in all of this, we'd be celebrating this. We'd be celebrating this and saying, hey, you know, this is good. This is start. It's a beginning. And I think that's quite a bad faith argument, to be honest with you, because you can't just ignore what has happened. You can't just say, well, if they weren't involved, you'd be celebrating it. Well, maybe they would, but that's not reality. That's not what happened. What happened is there was an option on the table to remove 100% of the Glazers, the debt, rebuild the stadium, rebuild the training ground, invest in the team, invest in the academy, invest in the women's team, invest in everything. That was on the table. So we can't pretend like it wasn't. We can't just pretend, well, that never happened, so we've got to be happy with the way we are right now. If it was just a one-horse race and it was only Ineos were involved, then maybe this would be perceived as a bit differently, and we'd say, well, it's the start. It's better than nothing, And maybe that's got to be the mindset now. Well, it's better than nothing. But is there really going to be any change as well? Sources close to Ineos and at Manchester United now believe the Glazers are moving towards selling this minority stake of 25% to Ratcliffe. Those sources who are not permitted to speak publicly due to confidentiality agreements have told The Athletic that a deal with Ratcliffe has been agreed in principle, subject to board ratifications. The key club figures are due to meet and vote on the proposed deal in the coming days, but again, this vote is considered to be a formality, and again, that's quite a big takeaway involved in all of this as well, is that this agreement, this deal, has agreed in principle. Again, the finer details of what has been agreed in principle, I don't think have been fully released just yet. Now, Ratcliffe's minority stake would potentially give the billionaire sporting control of the club, but deny fans a clean break from the unpopular owners. So they go through as well, talking about how, we got here, the strategic alternatives, etc., 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 as well. And they also go into why it's taken so long, which, of course, we've lived that, so we don't need to go through it once again. But as far as who will make this decision at this upcoming board meeting, of course, it's going to be the Glazers. They're going to be the ones that make this call. There are some key figures on the board, these independent board of directors, who are the ones previously that would have blocked an Ineos deal because of the stuff with the minority shareholders. They are John Hooks, Robert Leotow, and Manu Shwani. Their role is to stand up for the rights of the minority shareholders, as I mentioned, and make sure that everything is done in accordance with the company's articles of association, and generally hold the 6 Glazer siblings to account. Sources, according to The Athletic, say these responsibilities gave them pause for consideration when investors threatened personal legal action over Ratcliffe's previous bid for the club, as I said. But of course, that's no longer a factor, and it's still the Glazers club. They own 96% of the voting rights. 96. It's their decision. And again, this is when I go back to, even with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I guess, being on the board, owning 25% of the club, the Glazers would still have majority shareholding, but also majority voting rights. It would still be their club. They would still make the majority decisions on everything. And even if Sir Jim Ratcliffe's given sporting control, at any point, the Glazers, because it's their business, because it's their company, because they own the majority of it, and they would still have the majority of the voting rights, they could still make any decision that they want. They could take that sporting control back at any point. If they had, the decision, or they wanted to make the decision to, let's say hypothetically, get rid of Erik ten Hag or something like that. I mean, the sirens keep going. If they wanted to make the decision to sack Erik ten Hag, it would still be their call because it's their club. So that's when I still look at sporting control. What does that even mean? Sirens in the chat. You know what that one was? That was sneaking up on me, and I thought it wouldn't conclude that one, and then it did. Someone label it as a disgrace and a cheat. Click a like for the sirens on a Sunday. I had one like 4:30 in the morning. It woke me up. 4:30 sirens. Because this whole thing's criminal, is what it is. Now, what it would mean for the hierarchy at Manchester United, according to The Athletic, much of it depends on how Ratcliffe what Ratcliffe would get, and how much control he would get with the 25% stake. Athletic sources say his deal is premised on influence over sporting decisions, which brings uncertainty to this entire football department. Sir Dave Brailsford is Ratcliffe's sporting guru at his cycling team at Nice, the League One side he owns, and would be expected to get a job at United. What that means for football director John Murtough and those who work under him is unclear, but Erik ten Hag's position is thought to be safe, whatever happens. So once again, reaffirming that Erik ten Hag is not going to go because of this takeover or anything like that. So Dave Brailsford just really worries me, to be honest with you, because again, he's not a football man. He was, with Jim Ratcliffe for cycling. I think they're involved in, obviously, was it F1 as well, but he's not a footballing person. And if we go back into the territory of giving people's mates jobs again that have nothing, that really no, great working or experience in football, then where are we going back? He did a great job on my cycling team, so let's bring him in. Seriously? It's like there was a story after England won the Rugby World Cup. Rugby's World Cup's on at the moment. And I think was it 2003? And Clive Woodward was being linked up to become the Southampton manager. This is true. Go back. And rightfully so, there was outrage by it. Like outrage because they went, don't get me wrong, he won a World Cup, very impressive, but he won it in a different sport, in rugby. That doesn't translate to football. And there was pushback. But eventually he became the director of football. The director of football. A rugby coach became a director of football at that club. And he didn't last very long. Why didn't he last very long? Because it doesn't work. Like, you can't just go from one sport like that to the other. And it's the same with Dave Brailsford. He did a great job with the cycling team. Let's bring him across. How's it gone at Nice? I don't want to talk about it. And again, I'm not going to cry in my sleep for John Murtough or anything like that, because United, frankly, can do a lot better. But I don't think United, the replacement, no one is saying, get rid of John Murtough, put in Sir Dave Brailsford. Or, you could say Paul Mitchell, fair enough. He's got experience. But even if he's reporting into Sir Dave Brailsford, really? Is that what we're doing? And it wouldn't be just John Murtough, whose future would be up for debate. Richard Arnold as well. Talks over Richard Arnold's role as chief executive would also be anticipated, although that may depend on if, when, and how Ratcliffe increases his holding. Because again, Richard Arnold, he's a Glazer guy. Richard Arnold, he's a Glazer appointment in the same way that Ed Woodward was a Glazer appointment. And if they're still in charge, they could have recommendations from Jim Ratcliffe, and it depends what they fall into. Because you could say, well, John Murtough, he falls onto the footballing side of things. And if you've got Jim Ratcliffe, he goes, well, I'm in control of the footballing side of things, so I say, get rid of John Murtough. Okay, John Murtough goes. And I want to get rid of Richard Arnold. Well, it's not really the football side of things, actually, as well, is it? So, we'll keep him around. Why? We like him. He's our guy. He's a good guy. Why? He's friends with Ed. He was friends with Ed. We liked Ed as well. So he'd be involved. And then you get into this weird situation too, where you've got a guy that owns 25% of the club. I'm in control of sporting decisions, but you've got the Glazers. We're involved in just business decisions. But then it's a football club. It's a football business. So there's going to be points where it overlaps as well. There's going to be points where you go, well, is that a football decision or is that a business decision? Well, I don't know. Let's just say business, because guess what? We're still in control. It's still our club. And it's already... That's why I say, with this 25%, give me some details. What's been written down? This whole point of it's a foot in the door. We're going to buy it out over a period of time. How are we going to get there? Now, The Athletic have also said an interesting bit on why would a minority stakeholder get sporting control. And the reason they're saying that Ratcliffe would get sporting control over Manchester United is because that is the price Ratcliffe is demanding for his very generous and completely out of character offer to give the Glazers a premium price for what looks like a mediocre slice of the pie. So essentially, their point is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has overpaid for 25%, because this entire process was about overpaying as well. Again, they wanted 6.4 billion quid, $8 billion for Manchester United, a club that's actual value, market value is something like $3.5 billion. They wanted 8. They wanted over double, significantly over double for this. So Jim Ratcliffe has given $1.8 billion for 25%. So he's even overpaid for 25. You know, his for 25%, he's given about half of the actual market valuation. It's crazy. So because of that, you know, he says, well, if I'm gonna overpay for all of this, I want to have more control. But again, how does that work when on paper, in legalese, written down, black and white, whatever, you know, you've only got 25%. Well, I've got sporting control. How? Who says who? Is that written down? But reportedly, that's what he's demanding for this premium that he's paying. The Athletic are saying there is absolutely no other reason anyone who owns 25% of the company would be given such enormous power. So again, let's just read that part again there. Quote, there is absolutely no other reason anyone who owns 25% of the company would be given such enormous power. They're saying already this is out of the norm. Already, this is out of the norm for someone to get such a small percentage of a company. I mean, look, 25% is, it's a quarter, but still, 25% of a company should not usually be given that amount of control over key decisions. And the reason they're suggesting he might be given that is because he gave a lot of money in the first place. But that's what I said. Now, look, I'm not a businessman. I'm not involved in takeovers or transactions. But even I say, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense at all. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Unless he's got it written down on paper that he's going to be involved in sport decisions, how is that going to work? Now, Man United obviously should be first and foremost a sports team, and controlling that bit would appear to be the most important bit, but whether or not that's going to be the case, we don't know. The Glazers see Man United for what they really are, and what they perceive Manchester United is not a sporting team. They see Manchester United as a global advertising and retail brand in the leisure and entertainment industry. Who runs the football team is really of minor concern to them. Their focus, so they might be happy to let Ineos hire and fire coaches and, do everything on the sporting side of things, maybe. Ineos reportedly see this very differently. They suggest it's all about performance, as it is at cycling, sailing and running teams constantly remind everyone about. Striving for elite performance, distilling it, packaging it is what Ineos does, apparently, or certainly what it likes to say about what it does. It's what drove Ratcliffe to invest in these sporting teams in the first place. So maybe he will happily start with sporting control because that's what excites him and his friends, and he will let the Glazers continue to play at being masters of the sports industry universe for a bit longer. But will he eventually take responsibility off them as well? We don't know. But as I mentioned, when it comes to these other things, these other aspects of this, FFP or the stadium or what have you, there are some more details on that, which I'll get to in just a second. Let me get to these super chats and member chats too. Yeah, here we go. Star-Lord's been a member for 16 months. Original member, I think Star-Lord was the original member 16 months ago. Look at that. You're closing in on a year and a half. Says, you watch our season on the pitch really go down the drain now. Shit always rolls downhill. So Jim Glazer, I tell you what, well done for censoring yourself this early in the morning. Well done, Star-Lord. Is doing us dirt. Lil Yo-Yo says, Owen, let's list 5 positive things with Ratcliffe. Maybe do that in the chat. I don't want to, Lil Yo-Yo. It still tickles me every single time I click on your thing that actually there is a picture of a little yo-yo. So that's one. It's got nothing to do with Ratcliffe, but there's a yo-yo on my screen right now, which reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of an episode. Did everyone watch the cartoon Recess? Remember that? And there was a whole thing on yo-yos. That was cool. Oh, was that an episode of The Simpsons? Or was there? Did both cartoons have episodes about yo-yos? I feel like I've been distracted. V Cobra, welcome to the UV Members Club. But I can see from your badge it might be a case of just rejoining or something like that. I'm not sure. Red Baron says, where were you born in the 1930s? What, because I couldn't enjoy a yo-yo? No, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Was it Recess that had the yo-yo episode? Or was it Simpsons? My head's kind of like Why merge those things together? I'm not sure. Maybe someone can do that research for me. You know, not sure. Anyway, I'll go back. Cab says it's recess. I thought it was. Peter says it's Simpsons. Shit. Damn. Cactus says Randall's a snitch. Lilio says Recess had a yo-yo episode with Gretchen. Yes. And this was the thing. Their secret like handshake or secret phrase was yo, and then someone would go, yo. Genius writing from Disney, yeah? Oh, it was very, very smart. It was very, very witty. We need to come up with like a catchphrase. We need to come up with a catchphrase. Let's, yo. Genius. I'll get back to football. When it comes to the stadium, what does this mean for the stadium? What does this mean for the training ground? What does it mean about all of it? Well, the whole strategic review was sparked because the Glazers realised the enormous cost of renovating or rebuilding Old Trafford, as well as other things, which master planners priced at potentially more than £2 billion. I mean, the sirens are going again because I'm probably talking absolute shit. There you go. Ratcliffe's proposal does not answer that fundamental question. It may mean a further round of investment is required to generate funds for a meaningful stadium upgrade. So this is the point involved in all of this. The Athletics say it right there. Yeah, that as far as the investment in the training ground or the stadium or all that kind of stuff, another round of investment may be required to fix those issues. So realistically, where do we get to? We get to where we were before. Oh, we want to do a strategic review of alternatives. Why? Well, we kind of don't really have the money to do the things we need to do. We need to build, either renovate significantly or knock down and rebuild or just rebuild somewhere else. A stadium, we've got all of these options together. We can't afford it. Same with the training ground. Right, we can't afford that. So let's go looking for investors. They've got an investor and they're going, we still can't afford it. We're still going to have to do it again. We're going to have to... What are we going to do now? A month later, we're looking into a strategic review of alternatives once again. More people. Call up Elliot. Call up Carlisle. All those people that are interested in those minority things. And again, that's why we're... not only are we in a situation where the Glazers are still here, but the issues that we had 12 months ago are still the exact same issues. That's where we're at. All Elite says, so that £1.5 billion is going where? Into the Glazers' pockets. It's literally, so again, we don't really know what the sort of structure of the board's going to look like post Ineos integration. So there might be some Glazer siblings that have been bought out through this process. Maybe. Same with, obviously, some minority shareholders will have their shares purchased as well. But that's what I also said too. So that 1.5 billion, is that going towards anything? Is that going towards the stadium? Is that going towards training grounds? Is that going towards the women's team, the academy? No, it's just going to buy people's shares. If you think the Glazers are going to get this money and go, great, we'll put it back into United. Are they balls going to do that? Of course they're not. So we end up in a situation where we've got a guy now that's got 25% of the club. The Glazers are still in majority control. They've still got majority voting rights. And the issues that needed to be addressed in the first place, which is why we entered into this whole process, still need to be addressed. And then people wonder why you get angry. And this is why I say it wasn't about, for me anyway, maybe it was for others, but it wasn't about oil money. It wasn't about Middle Eastern cash. It wasn't about... oh, what, you wanted a state-backed club? No. What I wanted is the Glazers gone, and I wanted a plan, and I wanted to see that things were going to change. I wanted to see that, okay, right, the stadium's going to get fixed, the training ground's going to go in, like all that kind of stuff. Sirens pissing me off this morning as well. Let's get some reaction. Let's get some reaction from Flex. He gave his view. I can bring it to you this morning as well. Here are his thoughts on this whole thing.
And it's a shit day. It is, listen, like if tanks look, it's blue skies, Flex on the beach. I know you guys always like those videos, and I'd love to do this type of video with something positive. I'd much rather be coming on and giving Flex's views to a bid accepted from the Glazers from Sheikh Jassim. And the reality is, guys, it's over. It's done. And also, I think you don't want to be over dramatic and say things that maybe you live to regret, but could it be over for Man United as well, as we are as a football club, and where we're heading, and what the intentions are for our football club? There hasn't been anything from Sir Jim Ratcliffe yet in terms of bids, in terms of what's going on, but we have to wait and see. But what we do know is Sheikh Jassim gone. He's pulled out. He's gone. And the thing is, it's poor. It's poor. They've offered double the valuation of it. Double the valuation of it. And look now. Look now. They said no. The parasites, the leeches, they said no. You know, I saw, who was it? It was Fabrizio Romano, sorry. And he was basically saying that they'd offered, you know, twice the price of it. Let me just hold this properly. My arm's getting tired already. They offered twice the valuation. And the Glazers said no. They made it very, very clear they wanted more. They wanted more. And why are they staying with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, which looks like it's going to be that? Because they get to stay. They get to keep milking Manchester United. They don't have to put their hands into their own pocket. And essentially, I know we need to find out more about what's going to happen with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but essentially, they've secured minority investment. You know, the last bits we spoke about Sir Jim Ratcliffe taking over the football club and how he was going to do it with him restructuring his bid was him taking a minority percentage, sort of like a 25%. You know, the stakeholders, the shareholders were you know, happy with that after initial problems, as you know, as Sir Jim's bid was dead in the water, which we did with David Hellier a good few months back. And now it's changed. Sheikh Jassim has wanted to take over 100% of this club, put money into the training facilities, put money into a new stadium, put money into the women's team, put money into the academy. And now we're left with pretty much the worst scenario possible, which is the Glazers getting to stay at the club and completely rinsing Manchester United as a cash cow. They've been absolutely disgraceful in their lack of communication through this whole thing. We said the reason why they ain't saying yes is clearly because they want more. We knew it was because they want more. And I'm not surprised to see this day come. We had the hope, and you know, there was a legitimate bid there, more than a legitimate bid, multiple bids from Sheikh Jassim and Qatar and the 19 Foundation, multiple bids on the table that are good for the Glazers and good for Manchester United. But did they want it? Absolutely not. And they've taken the absolute piss throughout this whole thing. So listen, I feel like you guys, you know, everyone's dejected, everyone's angry. I know there's a small minority of people who don't really care. There's an aeroplane coming over in a second, so you're gonna have to bear with me through that. I'll project my voice a little bit louder, but there's a small minority of people who maybe, you know, don't mind Sir Jim Ratcliffe. They were against Qatar in the first place, and to those fans, it's all about opinion. That's up to you. I'd made my mind up a long time ago where I wanted the ownership to go, and I know a lot of you guys watching the channel have as well. And today's a really sad day. You know, you're looking at the news and I'm thinking, please let it be fake. Please just be fake. Like, don't, you know what I mean? But when you get Mike Keegan, when you get exclusive from Romano to kick it all off, then you get Ben Jacobs. They're all coming to the party saying the same thing. Rob Dawson all over it as well. It's unanimous across the board. Sheikh Jassim's gone. And you know what? When he buys another football club in the Premier League, when he takes over, I don't know, I'm just speculating by the way, but you know, West Ham or bloody, I don't know. I don't even know. When he takes over someone else and we see them flourish, we'll just have to sit there in jealousy of what could have been, because I really, really fear for us about where we're going now, what we're about to do, where we're heading. And it's poor. It really, really is poor. What does the future now look like for Manchester United? You know, I remember Marcel at the time saying he'd take Sheikh Jassim, he'd take Sir Jim Ratcliffe because it was at least the Glazers are going to go in some capacity. And I remember saying, awful, no chance. And now we're forced, not saying that we should see positives because I don't see any, but we're forced now to be like, well, it's the Glazers staying with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. What's his plans to get rid of him? And to be fair, we're not even that far. We're not even that far yet. We haven't even seen an official proposal from him. Let's see how quickly everything kind of, you know, goes from here in terms of what his bid's going to look like, what his bid's going to say, and when it goes in. But we know how it's going to look, and it's going to have the Glazers attached to this deal. And the Glazers, when they've had a chance to sell this football club for a record amount and wash their hands of it, take your money, double the valuation, and they still said no. They are the epitome of disgusting, greedy owners. They really are. And I don't know what to say. I'm actually speechless, because it was something that we thought could happen, but until, you know, there's no official kind of answer on it, you're saying, you know what, just wait. You know what? Just believe. Just keep believing. And didn't I say it? I said it when we was in Vegas on the Vegas Strip when me and KG had that little kind of back and forth. When I said, KG, they don't give a shit. They don't care. They don't care about Man United, the Glazers. They don't care. They don't have to sell now. They'll hold out for what they think is right. And so Jim Ratcliffe, up until the other day, was dead in the water, but managed to find a way that gave him a lifeline. And now he's staying. Now they're staying. And they're not selling the football club. It's disgusting. It really is. The months of back and forth, the months of it's happening, it's nearly happening, there's nearly this, there's nearly that. It's been so close so many times that we thought we was making progress. And now to have this in the end of it, it just makes you feel sick. It does. And some of you could be thinking, listen, at least, they're going and, you don't know what's going to look like with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He might surprise us, etc., etc. I ain't holding my breath for that shit. I really aren't. I'm really not, sorry. I seriously doubt, the level of funding he's able to secure, the levels of money that he has to do what he wants to do. And I severely doubt his intentions when he wants to get into bed with the Glazers and allow them to stay. That's not what I wanted to see. That's not what most of us wanted to see. And if his money is tied up in trying to buy the Glazers out within 3 years, that's another 3 years of Man United being like this and another 3 years of it being surplus. There's going to be no stadium renovation, new stadium. Nothing's going to happen at Carrington. Nothing's going to happen on the playing squad. Nothing's going to happen to the Caribbean. Nothing's going to happen to the women's team. Just more mediocrity. And some people online have said that's Manchester United done as an institution. That's Manchester United over and done with. And you don't want to say that when you get, a little bit, when you get news like this. Obviously, you feel defeated, you feel angry, you feel pissed off. You don't want to just jump to that conclusion because there's a lot more to come. But it does feel like that. It feels like, what's the future of the club? Where are we heading? We're heading down a deep, dark hole of more uncertainty with those, well, not even uncertainty. If they stay, it's a certainty of what's going to happen. If the Glazers are still involved with Man United, we know what's going to happen. If Jim Ratcliffe is involved with Man United, with the Glazers still there, we know what's going to happen. So, very disappointed. I'm annoyed. Of course, I'm under the sun. It's blue lights here. Blue lights, blue skies. It's great. But from a football perspective, with what's happened, it's put a real dampener and how I'm feeling right now. And I'm sure a lot of you lot.
Big up Flex under the sunny skies there. I tell you what, for all the stuff we talk about with KG and that when he leaves the country, Man United lose. When Flex leaves the country as well, bad stuff happens. I mean, I'm just saying. Some people asking me as well, what's KG's reaction? If you go back and watch the stream I did last night, I did call KG for his immediate reaction. He was, minutes away from going on stage to do stand-up, to try and make people laugh. And he wasn't really in much of a laughing mood as well. So big up KG too. But that was kind of the situation there. Of course, as I mentioned, guys, full view will be this evening, 7 p.m. Obviously, plenty to talk about, so be sure to join us there. Let me get to the super chats before I wrap things up. Red Baron says, maybe Glazers rejected the offer thinking Jassim would put another bid in, and now they are regretting it, blinded by greed. I think that is very wishful thinking, Red Baron. I think sometimes we give people too much credit and think that they're playing 4D chess when actually the most obvious answer is actually reality. And I think that, again, looking at how things played out, Romano broke the story first last night because clearly he'd been told by the 9-2 Foundation, we're withdrawing. And then it was kind of spun of, no, actually, really, the Glazers rejected their offer. Either way, they're out the race. And then it's a case of the deal with Jim Ratcliffe is going to be ratified in the coming days. So an agreement in principle was clearly done a few days ago, or maybe even weeks ago. So I don't think it was the case of the Glazers going, oh, well, let's reject it to get more money or anything like that. I think they'd made their mind up a long time ago. I think even going back to the beginning of this whole process, realistically, they had no interest in selling Manchester United unless someone was foolish or stupid or wealthy enough to grossly overpay for something that wasn't worth it. That's where that line comes from, of where determined sellers at the right price. That right price was a price they knew nobody was going to pay. So I don't even think realistically there was these sort of games of, we'll reject this one and they'll put more money in or whatever, particularly this last go of it. They found what they were looking for, someone to massively overpay as well for massively overpay for 25%, because again, Ratcliffe's already overpaid for a small fraction of the club. Joe Blackman's been a member for 6 months, said Jim should now go back in with a little higher bid and ask for a bigger percentage. Now he's the only horse in the race, thinking emoji. Well, I don't think he'd want to jeopardize at the moment. And again, this is the thing too, is that this idea of the foot in the door and it's going to be a part of a full buyout. Is there any confirmation on anything like that happening? I still have yet to see that. But more news will come out. More details will be revealed. Of course, when it is, we'll be covering it. Obviously, I'll be here. We can go live. We'll be posting videos. As I mentioned, full view will be later on this evening, 7 p.m. You can see it on the screen right there, 7 p.m. So be sure to join us then. Plenty to discuss with the full panel. Try and have a good Sunday. Don't let it ruin your weekend. I can't even talk. I'm out of here. Have a good one. Peace.